Before we begin, announce for a Sultan Fatiha from Marhum Mulabishu. Salam the seventh Imam, one loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعن الله الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وابتغوا إليه الوسيلة وجاهدوا في سبيله لعلكم تفلحون. صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Our respected scholars, elders, brothers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The verse in which we have recited comes from Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 31 of the Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents to us one of the most intriguing verses, and indeed one of the most spiritual verses that He has presented to us in the Holy Quran. He says to us, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah. When we translate taqwa, we can find it has various meanings, and of course the more depth you go into, the deeper the understanding of taqwa. But at face value, taqwa is to be aware of Allah as often and as much as possible. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu wabtagu ilayhi al-wasila, and seek a means of nearness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَابْتَغُوا إِلَيْهِ الْوَسِيلَةَ وَجَاهِدُوا فِي سَبِيلِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And strive hard in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you may be successful. As we stated, that this verse can be considered to be amongst the most spiritual verses that have been presented to us from the Holy Quran. Many of us, we look at this verse from a face value perspective, and many times in our discourses, in our discussion with other schools in Islam, we will normally take this verse to be a verse of debate, and we will present the look in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not just designated, but has specified and ordered us to have wasila. Now comes the discussion, who do we take wasila of? Of course, you and I, being the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam, take the wasila, we seek a means of nearness toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the first to the last. Be from the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, many of the Imams, and indeed who we are celebrating tonight, the birth of the seventh Imam, Imam Musa el Kazim, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. And therefore, in honor of our Imam tonight, what we would like to do is look at this verse through the great scholars and the Mufassirin who have described this verse in its various aspects, in the hope firstly to rekindle our love with the Imam, and therefore looking at some of the aspects of the life of the Imam and interlinking this with the verse in itself, so that we, in honor of someone who is called Bab al-Hawa'ij, the door towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore in honor of him taking this spiritual verse, looking at it through its various means of depth, and also linking it with his life. The verse, as we stated, is something of the most spiritual depth and the spiritual dynamic of Quran that is presented to us. When you look at this verse, you look at the scholars that who have commentated on this particular word wasila. And there is one whom we know, and someone who has translated this ayah for us into English, and has given us the tafsir in great depth in English, so that all of us, no matter what our age, inshallah, can understand. Allama Tabatabai, Allah bless his soul, in his monumental book Tafsir al-Mizan, has presented the various stages of wasila. He has inferred that the term wasila, seeking a means towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has various stages of depth and should not just be considered at face value that I seek a means of nearness by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the holy Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Rather, he infers that there are three categories or three stages of wasila. The first stage is this one which we know as face value. And many of my brothers and elders here who are far more spiritual in their endeavors will have reached the various depths. For someone low like myself, we would only have reached the face value meaning of wasila. For example, when we come on a Tuesday night, we recite dua tawassul. Inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na wa tawassalna bika ila Allah. When we recite dua tawassul, if we recite it just from our tongue and without a lack of ma'rifah or without a lack from the heart, this is considered to be the first stage of wasila. When I am calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through a member of the Holy Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, but only having done so from the tongue, when there is a lack of understanding in whom I am calling through, a lack of awareness of who I am actually calling through, then this is the first stage of wasila. Something in which I may be guilty of, something that we have to ensure that we are not guilty of. And therefore, when we look at the first stage of wasila, it is only calling through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this very stage. Here we want to take this opportunity to bring in the biography of the Imam, so that when we talk about the first stage of wasila, we highlight that when we bring our call, when we call through the wasila, we are only doing so through knowledge of the Imam and the basic understanding of his biography. And therefore, to honor the seventh Imam, we want to talk about a small aspect of his life, so that know him through face value. Thereafter, having known him through face value, we now need to determine what are the two latter stages of wasila, so therefore we can actually go into the depths of this method of calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you come to the life of the seventh Imam, Imam Musa el Kazim, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, you find that he has lived amongst the